Hello and welcome back to Unreal Engine 5 visual novel and narrative game design online course. In the last lesson we started the play message event, but we stopped at the sequence that will require the dialog code setup. So let's begin with our dialog code. We're gonna need a custom event, and we will call this event start message. Now, this event needs two inputs. So I'm gonna press twice the plus here, and the first will be line, the script line, which would be text. We can do it string, but text is fine, we can always manipulate this. And we're gonna need a enumerator for the name. So I'm gonna type here name, and the enumerator would be e names that we have created. So basically this gives us the list of the names. So let's promote the line to a variable, and we don't need to promote the name, just convert it to string in to string, and then to text. And now we're gonna fill our key name, and connect this here. So the moment that that message starts, the name is being filled. The next thing we need to do is get our line, make it a string, and from the string we're gonna get character array. This makes all the characters or the letters in the script line, to an array, and each element is one character. Even spaces, dots, exclamation marks, numbers, they make one entry on the array. I'm gonna promote this to a variable and call it message. Am I typing here? Character array. Now, why do we need this? We need this because we're gonna create a system, a typewriter system. Well, not exactly a typewriter, but it will have the typewriter effect. So, to do this, we're gonna create a macro. And we're gonna call it typewriter. I think this is the spelling. Anyway, now we have this macro, and we're gonna need two inputs of the type exe. One is to start running, and the other one is to break, like when we want the message to stop middle point, for example. And let's call the first one enter, and the second one break. For the outputs, we're gonna need three outputs. And the first one would be set text. The second one would be of the text variable, the text that we are setting, call it text, and the third one would be exit. Before we go into the coding of the typewriter, let me explain how it's going to work. I'm gonna bring paint. We don't need all this. Now, first things first. There is a lot of difference between a function and a macro. Some people would ask, why are we choosing a macro? There is a lot of difference between a function and a macro. Most basic current in our situation is that macros can have two inputs, then a function can have only one. And we could get around the second input with a boolean or something. The second one is that functions are, they cannot have time delay stuff in them. They execute once and they execute in order, and you cannot have a delay, you cannot have any time management inside them. Macros, on the other hand, can have this. Now, there's a lot of technical differences between macros and functions, how they react on code-wise, like macros copy the nodes and rerun themselves when functions are a collection. But this is not our issue right now. Our issue right now is how this typewriter is going to work. So what we will do, functions and macros can have local variables, which means that they are variables that are specified only inside the macro. And every time that macro runs, these are being reset. So we're going to use a bunch of these variables. We're going to be setting a text variable, a string variable, this an S, so weird S, anyway, and an integer variable. So we're going to have the text that is going to be the output, and we're going to have the string to append each letter of the array we have to the next string. We're going to set the string, and then we're going to be setting that string again to the text, and the text will go out. We have that integer that is counter to get from the array of our strings which one is the next one, and have a counter also that if it reaches the max, the last one, then exit. Basically, this is the drawing is not very well done, but this is the loop that we'll be creating. We're gonna add something to the text, append again to the string, check if the number is we have more to add, and rerun, and the text will be setting itself to the widget. So let's start with it. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna need the local variables. So we're gonna have a local text, a local string, and a local int. Now, to be honest, because we have the break, we will have also a local bool to stop the macro from running. So, how local variables work on macros? Because in functions, let's open a function. We have some here. In functions, we have these local variables down here. We can add variables and it's fine. As you saw now in our typewriter in the dialog, I had to create these nodes which are different than functions. Here we have to assign, I have to spell it correctly to appear. We have to assign a value. So as long as the macro is running, this value has what we have assigned it as a value. I'm going to connect this. All right, actually, let's change the order a bit. This should be here. And let's press N, connect it on enter. Now, you see this doesn't have a box. If I choose assign from here, it will have a box. This is because I took it as a wildcard, copy paste, and when you're doing wildcards, sometimes this gets lost. So, first thing first is if we're gonna break, we want to assign this on true. Again, the same mistake. So, if break is called, this is true. So whatever the code here says, it does that. Basically, it breaks. So the next thing we're gonna need is a delay node or a start delay. Like, what would be the delay before I start doing the message, which will be 0.01, let's say. Press comma. 0.0, let's say 0.5, which is minimal amount. Now, let's ask a question. First question would be, have we braked? So if break is called, stop. If this is true, we should again assign everything to 0. You see, this is a little bit annoying that we have to draw lines like this. But I haven't found any way to call the assigned variables instead of dragging a cable from here. If it was a function, you could easily call a variable like any other. This makes a little bit of spaghetti. It's fine, as long as we can read the system, it really doesn't matter. We're trying to get them as nicely done as possible. So, if break is called, exit the macro. And I think this was the easiest part. Like, we enter the macro, we assign nothing, and after less than a second, check if break is called, and if it's called, exit the macro. Now, what do we do if break is not called? Well, first of all, we want to assign again. The first letter of our array. So we're gonna get our message array. We're gonna append the value. So whatever is assigned to this, first run is nothing. So nothing plus get a copy plus the number of the array that we're gonna give. Now, the first 0 that we have is from the local integer because it's assigned to 0. So get the first one of the array, appending to nothing, we get the first letter. Now, we're gonna assign the text. After we append the string, then we move this here. This is 2 cables. This could be simplified with 1 cable. Make it like this. So we can follow a bit easier. If not that it's easy, but it's a bit easier to follow our cables when we are watching it from far afterwards to see what it does. try to keep it as clean as possible, but sometimes that's not the case. It's always good to tidy up the blueprint as you go, because if you make it and you try to do it in the end, mistakes can happen. Now we have assigned the texture, the text, sorry, not the texture. And after we assign the text, we're gonna assign the local integer 2 + 1. Again, this line is not needed. Draw it from here. Make it look better. And we will do a +1 here. We could move this here actually. So this, I really don't like this part here. Really don't. The octopus part. Anyway, now that we have assigned our next letter, first run would be nothing. And we have assigned our text. Let's see what happens afterwards. So we're gonna do a sequence here. Why? Because whatever happens, since we have not break, we want to assign the text to our widget. And the next thing we're gonna do is add another delay. And this will be the delay for when to add the next letter. Because this, after we do some actions here more, it's gonna loop back to the branch. So after which time will I assign the letter? And actually we can promote this to a variable and say Typerighter speed. So we can easily edit it if we want afterwards. Let's try with 0.01. Check the speed like that. Now, what should we do after the delay? The most common action would be to check, have we braked? But since we have a time delay, we don't know what the user has done in this time. Even if it's 0.01, the users might have clicked, might have done something to break the message. So since we have a time value, we should break. We should check if the user braked. And if he did, we go back up here, assign everything to 0, and exit. Now, what happens if we haven't braked? We need to ask one more question. Has the message end? So, what we're gonna check is we're gonna get this variable from here, so we don't drag cables all over. Well, we have drag cables all over, but the less the better. So, is our number integer that we are is our counter basically, the local counter, is it equal to the length of our array? If it's equal to the length of our array, it means we are on the last letter and we should stop. If it's not equal to the last array, we should continue. So if it's equal, you put exit. We are exiting the macro. If it's not equal, we should just return to our function, and this completes our loop. Now, in case your game has a pause functionality, this wouldn't work because this function would keep running as long as the game is paused. An easy way to deal with this would be not the most optimal, but having another branch here, ask is paused. If it's not paused, continue the loop, get the next, sign the next letter, put it on the text, blah 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 blah, and go on. If it's paused though, we can put a delay, whatever check time you want, let's say 001, overdoing it a little bit, 005, and ask again. So this will stay here looping as long as the game is paused, and when the game is unpaused, it will continue the message. There can be a whole system about pausing and unpausing, and you could have many dispatch callers or functions or whatever controlling this, but this is a nice way to check it. It is a bit of a mess, like which enter and which exit is not very clear. Oh yeah, it would need more room. Well, our game doesn't have pause, so I'm gonna delete this because I really don't like how it looks. And but if you put pause on your game, this is a way to do it. And we're done with the typewriter. This would be a good stopping point. I'll see you on the next. Goodbye.